We're playing with fire with this one, folks. The algorithms may not be happy with a certain keyword that this card cares about, but I'm not euphemizing myself for an entire episode, so we ball. Aveline de Grandpré is a green, 4-mana, 3/3 legendary human assassin creature with Death Touch and Disguise for green-black, which says that whenever a Death Toucher you control deals combat damage to a player, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Now, first things first, why does this card have Disguise? I know realistically it's because of lore and Wizards wanting to shoehorn a black colour identity onto here, but it just feels so odd and out of place. Regardless, this card bangs. She is an incredible commander and the Golgari general that the Death Touch deck was crying out for. Obviously, with the deck being so Death Touch focused, it's going to excel at being defensive, but the offense is generally where these decks can fall short. So how does Aveline remedy that? Simple, really. The speed with which she buffs up your creatures and causes you to become a problem is wild. She's basically doubling powers every turn, after all. It may seem innocuous at first, considering how most Death Touchers are piddly little things with 1 or 2 power, but just a couple of turns with no blocks turns those 1/1s into 4/4s, which are much, much more of a problem. And then you may of course think, okay, but just block them then. But of course they're Death Touchers, and thus they will destroy most any creature put in their way. This in turn creates a kind of Sophie's Choice situation, where the blocker's having to choose between losing a good chunk of their board to stop the Aveline Assault and keep that player in check, or taking a decent chunk of damage, giving the Aveline player some counters, and then dealing with the Aveline problem later. Let me tell you, option 2 there, far more enticing than option 1, especially in a 4-player game. What I'm essentially trying to say is your creatures will get large. And all of what I've just said is presuming that you're just using generic Death Touches with no other text, which I can assure you, you're not. The Death Touch pool is both deep and rich with some wonderful, wonderful options. On your standard end, you've got classics like Finn, Hooded Blightfang, Wormcoil Engine, and the Vampire Nighthawk family. But beyond that, if you delve a little bit deeper, you've also got a whole host of fun and interesting options, like Osteomancer Adept, Ronus the Indomitable, Vraska the Silencer, Shelob if you're feeling nasty. The list truly does go on. She even makes for a wonderful Nazgul commander for crying out loud. And honestly, while you could very easily just make a strong deck from this pool of powerful Death Touch friends, if you did, you'd actually be missing out on a lot of what makes this deck truly special. The synergies. Death Touch is known for having some incredible interactions, and in this deck where pretty much everything has the keyword, you can really lean into utilising these for all they're worth. Trample is, of course, the classic example here. And believe me, you want Trample. Don't forget that Aveline buffs creatures based on the amount of combat damage dealt. So trampling your Death Toucher through after dealing 1 damage per blocking creature goes absolutely insane with Mademoiselle de Grandpré. It basically invalidates the Sophie's Choice I mentioned earlier and chooses the worst option for your opponent. Blockers essentially become meaningless. It's a strong enough interaction that I play Garruk's Uprising in my personal deck, not as a draw engine, most of my creatures are too small for that, but rather as a board wipe trample granter that sometimes cantrips on entry. It also means that you can play some really silly overruns and have them go hard, like Full Steam Ahead for example. Then, of course, you also have First and Double Strike, which essentially guarantee a dead creature after any given combat when combined with Death Touch, and make your creature nigh invulnerable in combat, as Glisser loves to show. Double Strike is especially potent, though, as it triggers Aveline twice, but even better, triggers her in such a way that the Double Strike Death Toucher will gain the counters from the first strike damage before hitting for the regular damage, and then gaining that extra damage also in counters, essentially quadrupling the creature's power. And, oh boy, while there isn't much that gives Double Strike in Golgari, some of the cards that do are brilliant here. Grappling Hook forces blocks, Leyline Axe gives both trample and a buff as well, and Genji Glove, well, how would you like to have a creature that ends the turn with 16 times more power than it started the turn with? Double Strike, Double Combat will do that for you. And beyond just keywords, Aveline has even more mechanics and card types to play with. Combat tricks, for example, also go hard, as Aveline essentially allows them to stay around after combat resolves because the extra power gets converted into +1/+1 counters. From a simple Giant Growth or Invigorate to game-warping cards like Indomitable Might, Aveline loves a sudden instant speed buff to just take a hefty chunk out of your opponent's life totals. Similarly, lore effects are yet another type of broken card to play in here. Slap a Roar of Challenge on one of your death touches and just swing it and a bunch of other creatures at a player. Worst case scenario, you trade your one guy for a decent portion of their board, thanks to the Foundation's multi-blocking rules, and every other attacking death toucher gets full Aveline triggers. The best case scenario, though, it results in an eliminated player and a double-sized board. Herein lies the true joy of Aveline. Death Touch is really flexible, and Aveline takes full advantage of that to open up a beautiful world of possibilities. From equipment to control to combat tricks to just pure Death Touch advantage, Aveline covers so many interesting build paths with overlapping synergies, and I love her so much for it. I know Universes Beyond isn't everyone's cup of tea, but if you're willing to look past her Assassin's Creed origins, I promise you this commander will be worth your while.